Hello, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, Giving Black family, wherever in the world you may be. Ekwabor, Eti saying, bienvenue, welcome, and happy Black Philanthropy Month. This is a global celebration of Black philanthropy and generosity, and I welcome you. I am Olumide Akerewusi, founder and CEO of AgentsC Inc., and your proud host of the third annual Giving Black Conference. I share a heartfelt greeting with you and gratitude for you being in the Giving Black Conference today. Our theme for the conference is Advancing Belonging, Journeys Towards Social Change. We chose this theme because in our experience as Black social change makers, we've endured exclusion when we come as participants, when we come as donors, when we come as consultants, as practitioners, as experts, as fundraisers, as volunteers in the nonprofit sector. And we want to lean into this issue through the conference. To guide us through the conference, we're joined by a super special guest and co-host of our conference this year, the incredible and lovely and dynamic Gunang Adamu, my Nigerian sister, a rising star of the BBC, a skilled presenter, an entrepreneur, and a social impact advocate. Gunang, how are you this morning?
I am well. I don't sound well, but that's because luckily I traveled from the UK in Liverpool to New Jersey. So I'm currently at family's house in New Jersey. I'm super excited to be here. So thank you so much for inviting me to co-host this amazing day with you. And it's been a blessing to watch every single year. So, and it's a blessing for me to be here this year as well. So yeah, I cannot wait to start the conversation. And thank you for what you're doing so far, midday. So yeah, I'm loving it.
Thank you. The pleasure is all mine and all ours. I know I speak on behalf of our audience. It is just wonderful to see you, and welcome to North America.
You know what? It's nice. I should have been American.
Well, you are now. Uh, hey, something comes to my mind right now. It's a scriptural quote, and it's taken from 1 John chapter 3, verse 17. And in that, John says that if anyone has the world's riches, wealth, and sees his brother or sister in need and shuts up his heart towards that person, the question has to be asked, how can the love of God be in that person? And this is the theme or a sentiment that I would like to kick off our discussion today. Philanthropy is a physical act. It's a mindful commitment, and it's a spiritual responsibility. So dear Jesus, my prayer for everybody here today who has joined us from across the world is that we grow in our philanthropy, in our generosity, and in our spirit of giving and love towards one another. Make us one through love, we pray. Amen. Ashe, ashe, ashe. I also want to share AgentsC's equity statement because as a company, we steep our work in values that we believe brings people together. But we also steep our work in truth-telling and challenging systems of oppression. So I acknowledge that I am living on colonized land, taken from indigenous nations by European settlers. I acknowledge that I am also a settler in this land, and that my people were brought to this land originally as slaves by Europeans from my colonized homeland, the continent of Africa. Through colonization, we've been part of a system that obscures the stories of darker-skinned peoples while prioritizing those of the European narrative. Settler societies often silence Black and Indigenous voices and control narratives, leaving out or misrepresenting our histories, our cultures, our traditions, our contributions to Canadian society. At AgentsC, we seek to revisit the past, ask difficult questions about justice, and explore multiple perspectives towards acknowledgement, atonement, reconciliation, and healing to foster equity. We are committed to collaborating with all communities, including Black and Indigenous organizations. And as part of our commitment, AgentsC aims to grow the Equity Philanthropy Fund and commit to invest in financial and pro bono support in Black and Indigenous nonprofit organizations. This equity statement is in part borrowed from the land acknowledgement of the history of Canada. I want to give a quick shout out to the Alabama Boat Worker crew, and I want to welcome everybody to the Giving Black Conference 2023. We have poetry, we have storytelling, we have conversation, we have spotlight issues, we have wellness, we have virtual networking. We're here to celebrate. Just a quick note from me. You can find out more about our conference and our speakers on our program guide. So please use your program guide as a reference as we go through multiple conversations in our conference today. Before I do that, before I move on, I also just want to say a big shout out to all of our speakers, to all of our sponsors, to everybody who has played a role in making this year's conference possible. I'll speak more about that as we go through. But for now, Audre Lorde says that poetry is not only dream and vision, it is the skeleton architecture of our lives. It lays the foundations for a future of change, a bridge across our fears of what has never been before. And in that vein, poetry is central to the Giving Black Conference as a way of expressing the sentiment and the theme that we want to share. She's wise, she's beautiful, she's Black, she's a woman, and she is a fundraiser. She's into business. She's a poet. She grounds us in meaning through her words. She is Nicole Salmon, the Giving Black Conference resident poet. Nicole, I'm proud to introduce you, and I welcome you to your third Giving Black Conference. Welcome. How are you today?
Is happening, and it's always a pleasure to spend time with you. So I'm very pleased to be here. You know, Midday, you call me and say, I need you, I'm here.
I always need you, sis. Always.
That's wonderful.
Always.
Thanks, brother. Thanks, brother.
And can I say it's beautiful to see you? I feel like you and I haven't caught up in a while.
It's been a while. It feels like it.
We've got to fix that.
Yeah, and some folks have been real busy, right?
had our hands full, you mean?
Hands full, hands full. So it's all understandable, my brother. Oh, I'm pleased to be here to share some words and some reflections, and as I said, it's a real honor to be here for the third year, and you put a smile on my face every time you call me the resident poet. So thank you.
Thank you.
So here we go. The Black Star Line was a Black-owned shipping line incorporated by Marcus Garvey, and which operated between 1919 and 1922. While its purpose was to provide discrimination-free transportation between the Caribbean, Central and South America, and Africa, it represented more than that. It was a symbol of Black empowerment and agency, and was seen as an important pillar in Garvey's Pan-African movement, the unity of Black people wherever we were. It's still alive, and the movement is being revitalized. This poem pays homage to the Black Star Line and celebrates Black independence, aspirations, achievements, contributions, and activism in a world that continues to invest significant energy and resources to crush us, deny us, and tell the story of us. Now, we can't and won't have that, will we? This poem is called Black Star Line. We dream, we're visionaries with imagination working overtime, dispatched to places leaving our bodies behind, uncaged spirit free to soar once more, to peek behind what lays just beyond heaven's door. We dream, believing we can shape a different world into being, one we shouldn't have to die before seeing. And all the while, in unabashed pride, Tony writes about Black lives. We create, we are innovators. With unabated zeal, we plunge deep, unlocking limits and talents lurking beneath. Spewing art like a shooting star, fertilizing the world with what we carve from scratch. We create altered states from pristine slates, bringing to fore things never seen before. And all the while, with unabashed pride, Tony writes about Black lives. We witness, we are storytellers. With empath, we feel Billy's ache, singing of strange fruits, dangled fate. We see Rosa defy on a Montgomery bus ride. We, like Marvin, ask, what's going on? We witness to overwrite impending lies, to blackwash what history will try to hide. And all the while, with unabashed pride, Tony writes about Black lives. We rage, we're hurting beings with a sear that holds both hot and cold heat, smoldering, waiting for the dousing of grief, coiled like a stubborn knot with little release, and time refuses to even wipe clean. We rage, but that don't mean lives devoid of joys, frequent respite, to celebrate in all Black ways. And all the while, with unabashed pride, Tony writes about Black lives. We challenge, we are brave and courageous, with a living fear that has taken abode, wreaking havoc with hurricane force, tearing through our unsettled homes, shattering what we prayed would be protected zone. We challenge, balancing on a razor-thin edge. Now, what other choice have we been led? And all the while, with unabashed pride, Tony writes about Black lives. We unite, we are the diaspora, with roots in a homeland many will never see. We seize the possibility of coming together, summoned to a challenge we must not face alone, chanting all for one and one for all. We unite and fight to the end for a world we all belong in. And all the while, with unabashed pride, Tony writes about Black lives. We love, we are free, with daring love or precious currency bill, outshining the most brilliant of diamonds, a beam of light within spurring us uphill, no more so than in times of weakened will. We love, as Bob wails, free our minds from mental slavery, landing softly, nestling and resting. We dream, we are visionaries. We create, we are innovators. We witness, we are storytellers. We rage, we are hurting beings. We challenge, we are brave and courageous. We unite, we are the diaspora. We love, we are free. And all the while, with unabashed pride, Tony writes about Black lives. Thank you, my brother.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nicole.
Thank
As I was listening to your poem, all I kept on thinking was we are like fertile land. You plant a seed and so many things grow from that land. And, you know, and I want us to continue to respect that about us. That's such a powerful poem. Thank you so much, Nicole
Thank you.
Salmon.
Thank you. Anytime. Thank you, sis.
Thank you very much. So we have our first panel discussion of the day, of the morning, of the afternoon, of the evening, and it's celebrating Black belonging and creating social change. Now, for those, before I introduce our panelists, for those asking if this is being recorded, it will be recorded and it will be available after the event for 30 days. So yes, it will be recorded. So our panelists are, we have Derek, our host is Mide, and the panelists are Derek Bodwell, Ray Williams, Jade Ashley Nicolel, and Nana Afadzino. Afanzino. So yeah, welcome, host Olumide.
Thank you so much. Just want to echo your sentiment, Ganang. Sister Nicole, thank you. Such a powerful, powerful reminder of the power of poetry, but also our role as Black people in the nonprofit sector as change makers as well. We do challenge and we do plant those fertile seeds in the ground for things to grow. And I want us to continue to be able to do that. It does give me great pleasure to convene our panel today. And the purpose of this particular section of our agenda is to really delve into this discussion around belonging. Who belongs? What does belonging mean? Why is it important? And what is our experience of belonging when it works well and when it doesn't work well? And Derek Bardowell, who is author of Giving Back, I should say that again. Derek Bardowell, who is author of Giving Back, not Giving Black. So he's author of Giving Back, How to Do Good. He's also CEO of 10 Years Time, an organization in the UK. He's unable to join us in person, but I had the privilege of catching up with Derek last week, and he pre-recorded a message, which, it's special. I don't want to say any more about his message. We'll come back and talk about that with our panel. But without further delay, if we can play Derek's message to our audience today, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Years time. I'm also the author of the book Giving Back, How to Do Good Better. I guess my story very much starts in Newham, in the East End of London in the 1980s. And for any Black person growing up in the 1980s in that part of London, it was very much a hostile environment. You had a racist party called the National Front. You had police stopping and searching Black people a lot of the time. You would have the police called on you from a very for doing nothing, in shops and stuff like that. And racism was very much an everyday thing. It was something I experienced in sweet shops, bus stops, in the school system. So you could say that from a very early age, I was heavily politicized. It was also a period of the Brixton uprisings, the New Cross fire, and lots of hostility towards Black people, particularly second generation Black people. So from an early age, I felt very politicized. I didn't quite understand it and what that meant at that particular point. I was a kid that probably typically of most kids born in Britain ate fish and chips, and liked, watching the England football team and things of that nature. I was obviously very aware of my Jamaican heritage. My parents are Jamaican, and also, listened to reggae music, grew up with Bob Marley and Rice and Peas and all of that, but I was kind of split down the middle in a very healthy way, until a number of these incidents really started to impede on me at an age that I couldn't really understand. And so very quickly, what was something that for me as a young kid, kept me at ease, very much became a site of conflict. There was a conflict between Blackness and Britishness. There was a conflict between shared experiences and a shared birthplace. And I quickly found my sense of comfort, my sense of belonging in Blackness and within those shared experiences. But what those experiences do to you from an early age is very much, it creates a level of paranoia, because you have this spotlight, this white gaze that is continually scrutinizing you all of the time. And so growing up with that, you feel that all of the time. It makes you always say that the way that I arch my shoulders was born from those experiences from a young age. It also gives you a high level of distrust in institutions, because most of these things were perpetrated by institutions. So fast forward to, many years later and going into philanthropy and moving into that space. And I guess for me, while I understood philanthropy as an institution and there was levels of distrust that I would have had for it, there was also an element for me that this was a space where there could be some solutions. This is a space that could be resourcing racial justice. This is a space where you could find something within yourself and of yourself within this particular institution. But then you quickly find that philanthropy as an institution, and perhaps that was naive of me, so let me just pull that back and say, yeah, perhaps I was being naive, but you quickly find out that philanthropy as an institution reinforces so many of those disparities. The hunch that you feel, which has been now backed up by data and evidence of, Black-led organizations not being underfunded, not getting much funding, or having to fight twice as hard to get that funding. The lack of diversity on the boards, the microaggressions and passive aggressiveness in those spaces, the fact that when you're trying to advocate for Black-led organizations, you are having to create, masterpiece reports for small pieces of money to justify it. The lack of trust, the way that risk is framed around our communities. You suddenly start to realize that as an institution, philanthropy is an extension of all of the other things that you distrusted when you were growing up. And all the while, you hear some language that talks about racial justice and change, but you never really see any particular change, particularly when it comes to significant resourcing or any level of rebalancing of power. I think the thing that I always found startling is the fact that our framing around how we resource racial justice through an institutional philanthropic context was heavily based around the concept of creating safety around those with power and privilege. So you spend your time appeasing power and privileges as if the stewardship of money and the preservation of power has more worth than the experiences and solutions of those most impacted in our communities. That's where the safety comes from. But at what expense? At what expense does that take that away from you as a Black person, as a racially minoritized person in those spaces, that the dynamic in order to resource our community is based on safety for them with all of the power and privilege, but no safety for you? True wealth derives from the experiences and solutions of the most impacted communities. And at present, our economic systems view wealth financially. Philanthropy is a byproduct that often fails to acknowledge this. And so few professions for me, and I've worked across the private, public, and third sector, this, in terms of philanthropy, has made me feel more of an outsider than so many of the other jobs that I've ever had. So belonging is at odds for me in terms of philanthropy. Philanthropy, you understand when you're in it, there is great potential for it to have significant impact, but you also really understand that there is also a constant questioning if you are a Black or racially minoritized person within it. For me, my belonging comes from the feeling of ease in myself, in my body, and in my environment. It comes when I am hanging out with my family. My belonging comes when I'm writing. My belonging comes when I'm coaching. My belonging comes through my love of old school hip hop and 90s dancehall music. And yeah, I have to admit, 70s cop shows. My belonging comes from my heritage too. I felt it in pockets when I visited Galena in Jamaica, which is where my parents were born, in New Orleans, and sometimes in Mayo Park in Sydenham, which is in southeast London, which is where my kids, when they were growing up, spent so much of their time. And I try to find some level of belonging in some of the bits that I do in philanthropy, right? So right in my book, I felt it in pockets around that. And as a philanthropy advisor at 10 years' time, we try to bring some of that within the work that we do. But belonging for me really comes from essentially being able to do the things that enable you to bring your full self to the table. And right now, the way that philanthropy is constructed, for me, it doesn't enable me to bring my full self to the table. It enables me to bring my fight to the table because I'm often having to fight, but it doesn't necessarily enable me to bring my full self. I want to read a quote. It's from the late Uruguayan writer Eduardo Galeano. He once said, "I don't believe in charity, I believe in solidarity. Charity is so vertical, it goes from top to the bottom. Solidarity is horizontal, it respects the other person. I have a lot to learn from other people." So for me, in the work that we do, we call ourselves philanthropy advisors because I guess essentially that's how people identify the work that we do at 10 years' time. But in reality, we are solidarity advisors. And solidarity isn't just about money, although we work to move money to racially minoritized communities. It's about common political goals. And those common goals could be around reparations. It could be around tax justice. It could be about finding alternative economic systems. But what we want to do in the work that we do is move beyond philanthropy offsetting extractive practices. We want to move beyond paternalism. We want to move beyond grant making and all of those institutional practices that constitutes philanthropy as we see it today that reinforces those disparities. We want to move towards more of a cultural practice. So I speak a lot about Caribbean activism and Black British traditions of activism and philanthropy. You know, I talk about some of the key principles that underpin this. The fact that so much of our philanthropy, our traditions of philanthropy, were based on a people's culture, where risk and rewards were shared, where people, my community, did more with less, and where so much of the stuff that we have innovated had the curb cut effect. And the curb cut effect meaning that it didn't just benefit our community, it had a wider impact on all people. Why? Because as canaries in the mine, when something was harmful for us and we found a solution for it, and we presented that danger in the ways that we overcome it, it ended up benefiting everyone. And so much of this stems from Black people's imagination and our ability to overcome barriers by creating something new. So I try to frame my work around that. I try to frame my work as best possible around Black creativity and what we have done, our traditions, what philanthropy means to us. While the personal is always and the professional are always linked for me, And I always say this, if you live it, you can't leave it. I've used my work to try and dim that spotlight, but I also seek solace in other areas. I wrote at the beginning of my book, Giving Back, that reparations is what love looks like in public, which was said by Vanessa Thomas from the Decolonizing Wealth Project. But Black creativity is what love looks like in public too. We know that racism mutates, but Black creativity mutates too. The people's culture. I fully understand the power of this and the traditions of this. And that's what I focus on. That's safety for me. That's belonging for me. That's what helps us navigate hostile environments historically. The movements, the innovations, the thinkers, that's what I try to find in the work that I do, try to find resources for. I want to thank Amara Spence and her recent essay, and Serena Johnson and Sophie Simpson for reminding me of that liberatory possibilities, the bigger picture. And as I say this, the song I Know You Got Soul by Eric B. and Rakim comes to mind, and how I was as a child spending days, probably when I should have been studying maths and when I probably should have been doing English literature, was writing Rakim's lyrics down, every line, because every line was meaningful. And I couldn't understand why this guy sounded about 10 years ahead of all of his peers. And I didn't understand the techniques and everything that he was using and the craft. But that's what belonging sounded like for me. So what does belonging sound like for you?
What does belonging sound like for you? I want to invite everybody who is part of this conference today to really just reflect on that question, our audience in particular. What does belonging sound like for you? And before we get into that discussion, Ray Williams, Vice Chairman of Financial Markets and at National Bank Canada, is with us. Queen Jade, Ashley Nicolau, Global Head of People and Culture at Second Muse, a member of Forbes, Human Resources Council, change maker, culture shifter from the USA, is here with us. Nana Afadzino, Executive Director of West Africa Civil Society Institute, WACSI, from Ghana, is with us. I welcome you all. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Nana, I want to kick off with you, if I may. What does belonging sound like to you?
For me, belonging means being a part of something where you are accepted, and like Derek said earlier on, where you could be yourself and bring your whole self. So yes, that is what it means to me. And in the context of philanthropy, for me, it means being able to demonstrate our indigenous philanthropy, and that being accepted and acknowledged. So that's what it means to me.
I want to ask you to expand a little bit on that, if I may, please, Nana.
Sure.
I think you're touching on perhaps a uniqueness of African philanthropy.
Yes,
And
I am.
I think I would love to hear, and I'm sure our audience would as well.
Yeah, I am.
With us, please, just a bit about that.
I think one of the things that we see or recognize is that when people talk about philanthropy, very often the image of philanthropy that we have in our minds is the Western, Eurocentric kind of philanthropy. That kind of focuses on money and wealthy people or people who are well off giving to people who are poorer, to support them. It's individualistic. It's about people doing things maybe out of the generosity of their hearts. Now, that is different from African philanthropy. And I'm currently doing my research and thesis on that. And some of the things I've found is that for us, philanthropy is not something that we do. It is actually our being. It is our culture. It is core to who we are. And that the aspect of belonging is because we, if you look at our communities, are part of our communities, and our communities are part of us. That is why we talk about Ubuntu. So when Derek talked about solidarity, yes, solidarity is key for us. It's not even about charity looking at things vertically or philanthropy vertically or even horizontally. It is actually circular.
Yes.
Because for us, life is like a circle. Reciprocity is important. You look at how to support each other. You can be at the top today, at the bottom tomorrow, and we all support each other. And that is how we sustain our very ecosystem and equilibrium. And it's not just us, it's also, we are very spiritual as Africans. And all of you, everybody who is Black, you are African. so it is very much a part of us. And that is why, even if you look at, for example, the 2023 philanthropy tracker, remittances are actually about $590 billion dollars. If you compare that to official development assistance, which is 180 million, you compare that to philanthropic giving, the so-called philanthropic giving, which is 70 billion, and even private capital investment, which is 0.4 million.
Yes.
Our remittances, because of the community that we are a part of and belong to and believe that we need to support each other, it's far more than that, but nobody recognizes that.
That's right. And I thank you so much for drawing attention to that. And I think, I agree. I also look at philanthropy from a holistic point of view. It's not that transactional piece by piece, but it's the whole picture. And I thank you for reminding us of that. Queen Jade, I have a question for you as well. Same question, if I may. What does belonging sound like to you?
It's so interesting that I get this question quite a bit. People ask me, what's belonging feel like? People will say that I'm the chief belonging officer. And in the United States, I'm a Black woman, and I'm also, from my Black brothers and sisters, I'm a mixed woman, right? So belonging is actually very difficult for me in many spaces because the United States is not unique, but it celebrates the losers. We celebrate the people that lost. We had the Civil War and the South lost, and we still celebrate them. We still honor and celebrate the people that lost, the people that were wrong, the people that said that, the desecration of Black and Indigenous people, so that we can grow is what they wanted. And that is still what we honor and celebrate. So belonging is very difficult to feel in the United States, and I'm sure globally for Black people. If you heard the podcast, a quote that so many people have sent me, they're like, this is the truth. Anti-Blackness is this global phenomenon. So belonging for me, it's interesting that we talked about what does it, feel like in philanthropy. I think very much so that the colonizers understood that circular mentality that African cultures had and Indigenous cultures had. And that's why they desecrated it, because we don't see philanthropy or anything as giving as being this individual thing. We have African proverbs that say, it takes a village to raise a family. Yeah, it takes everybody. It doesn't take one person. It doesn't take this one individual. It doesn't take the person with the most money or the most power or the most anything. It takes everybody. It takes the collective. It takes the community. And I think the colonizers saw that and tried to very much so dismantle our culture, our heritage, and it's very pervasive. So belonging has been very difficult. And to me, what it feels like truly is to be able to show up and speak freely without judgment, without being questioned, without showing up in those spaces. And we talked about this about, why is my opinion less than? Why is when I say something, it's questioned? How come when I bring my knowledge to the room, it's the thing that somebody wants a second opinion on or a third opinion on? It is never the thing that is simply, she's right. I'm the expert in this field. Why am I the one that's questioned? And in the United States, that's what it feels like. You're constantly being questioned as a Black person, as a woman, as an Indigenous person. You're just questioned. So belonging is difficult to share. What does that feel like? Because truly, I've never felt it in any space other than when I'm with my family or with my friends, and I can just be me and not have to worry about, am I being Black enough? Am I being American enough? Am I being African enough? So, having never even been to Africa, I have no clue if I'm doing this right or wrong. But I can just be with my friends and family. But in the rest of the United States, at work, at school, in these white supremacy cultures, I cannot just be and belong. I cannot do and be because the space is not designed for me. So it's a very complex question to answer. And I don't know that I have the best answer, but that's the best way that I can answer it in this moment is I don't know what belonging feels like just quite yet. And when I do, I'm hoping that I'll be able to share and that it'll feel like some warm yellow light just kind of pouring over folks.
Amen to that. I too search for that warm yellow light that signifies finally that I might belong as a change maker, as somebody interested in social change, as someone who cares for and loves the world and people who are in it. I know, Ray, you are having a few technical difficulties, but I wonder if you can hear it. Okay, brilliant. Well,
yeah,
welcome
I think
back.
I'm okay now. Sorry about that. I mean, like, I was panicking over here because it was working before and then suddenly it wasn't working.
No worries.
So, yeah.
No need to panic. We are just proud and pleased to have you join us. Thank you. Ray, I want to ask you a question just to kind of link back to what Derek was saying. He said that belonging brings the fight, that solidarity and common political goals unite us. In a social change or philanthropy context. What are your thoughts about that statement?
There is so much truth to the statement and so much truth to and how I resonated with so much of what he had to say. It's very clear, very evident in some of the ways that we see philanthropy being undertaken as it speaks to Black people. The lack of access, or how at any point in time it's just a trickle. And so the notion of our belonging in that context is about how we create for ourselves. Right? That would be my takeaway. And one of the reasons for me, that sense of belonging is when we do get together and undertake for our community and ourselves.
Yeah, thank you, Ray. I've been increasingly convinced that as I assess my expectations of the mainstream nonprofit sector across the world, that my efforts on a personal level have somewhat been futile in search of belonging. And certainly my commitment over the last 3 to 4 years, certainly since the murder of George Floyd, is that any gaps that we see as Black people that affect our belonging, we must actually pursue the approach of trying to plug those gaps ourselves, because nobody else will. And I want to kind of open that up as well as a very powerful concept, the concept of us creating the world, the environments, the communities, the families, the associations, the institutions that we want to see. Because somehow there seems to be an inevitability that when we as Black people enter mainstream institutions, our pursuit for belonging may never be achieved. Queen Jade, what are your thoughts on that?
I think I find it just so interesting. Being an American is a very interesting thing to be. And we touched upon this before we got on this call about how Americanness can be the thing that's trumped in terms of before your color sometimes. And globally, I felt that I've lived in the United States my whole life. And when I travel, people do see my color, they see my hair, and they see what I look like. And then they hear me speak, and they very much so see an American, which can at times trump being Black. but my experience is discounted. It doesn't really matter whether I'm American or not, because there's a good type of American and there's a not so good type of American. There's a one that fits the mold of what they want it to be, and one that's like, okay, they're American, but they're less than. And that pervasiveness, it's wild to me that around the globe, no matter where I go, that yes, okay, she's American, but she's kind of like that second or third class American. She's not quite the one that we want. She's not the one that we need to have in our spaces. So in philanthropy, it's very much so the same thing, right? Like, okay, she's the American. She sounds like what we want her to sound like. And she, is more palatable because she isn't as dark, but that's not what we really want. We need the one that's the good one. We need that one. And that to me is just, it's wild. It's a really, again, it's a wild concept to think that there are, different levels to a global caste system that is not unspoken, that is very much so thrust in our faces, that we feel in philanthropy, that we feel in the private sector, that we feel in the public sector. We feel it everywhere. It is this, this terrible feeling that that you're going to have to fight 10 times harder to just get that kind of trickle that they were talking about, that one drop is what you're going to get. You're going to fight 10 times harder to just get that one drop. And it's overwhelming, and it's almost soul crushing at times. And to have the communities that we have, to be here. I said earlier, I'm here with my coffee. I have these beautiful people on the screen. I brought my folding chair. I don't know if everyone else has theirs, but my folding chair is here. I'm ready to go, because if that's what we're doing, if we're bringing the folding chairs, I'm ready to bring it to the fight, because whatever it's going to take for us to kind of move this needle and to feel like we belong, or to let people know that we're here, that we're just as good as everyone else, I'm ready to do that. So I hope that answers your question.
It absolutely does. And quickly, I want to move on to Nana. Nana, what does the folding chair look like to you? There you are in Ghana, leading WACSI. What does the fight look like for you for belonging and creating those systems that are uniquely African, that serve Africans and Black people in general across the world? Please share.
For us, it means really fighting hard to ensure that we are giving the equal respect and the trust in our partnerships, whether it's with we talk about the global north and the global south. But like you're saying, we do have communities in the global north that also face this kind of discrimination. So that's a very simplistic kind of division. But yeah, it's about fighting for that space that is ours, for the fact that our knowledge is equally important and should be respected. Our practice is as much as valuable as others. Our institutions are as valuable as others and should be given that equal respect. So even in philanthropy, that is one of the things that we are fighting for. To say that when you are talking about African philanthropy or any kind of philanthropy, African philanthropy is as important and should be given the acknowledgement and respect that is given to Eurocentric philanthropy. And we need to understand what that is. Yeah. So that's what it means for us. For us, that is the fight, and it's about, and so if you've heard about shifting power within the international space and a lot of the work around that, we are very much involved in that fight.
We are very much involved in that fight. Ray Williams, Queen Jade, Nana Atazino, thank you. Thank you for being part of this important conversation. Also want to thank Derek Bardowell for sparking the insights that we have all shared today. I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much. And I look forward to being in touch soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So this notion of fighting, as Nana said, fighting for the space that is ours. I can't say really just how powerfully that resonates with me personally, having been in the nonprofit sector now for probably over 28 years. And that's what I find a lot of my peers involved and engaged in as well, kind of creating this space that we know doesn't exist and will not exist unless we create it ourselves. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. But before I do, I want to invite my sister Ganang back. Ganang, how are you?
You know what? Listening to that discussion, it's very powerful because from a media perspective, you know, it's a shame that we don't talk enough about Black philanthropy. We don't even show Black faces when it comes to philanthropy. So even our own community doesn't know that we are so given and we pay it forward. So, you know, there's a lot of work that I have to do, you know, within my space to make sure that these conversations are happening. So this is why it's so important to have events like this, like Giving Black, because we're sharing, and people know that it exists. There'll be people on call right now who will be so surprised that this is even happening. You know, so from my perspective, working for the BBC, I have to do more. So that really, that discussion really got me. And I made the big note. I was like, yes, media's role. What do we need to do? Because the media has made out that we don't trust each other.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's something that we have to dispel. We do trust each other. We do love each other. We do work together, and we have to push that narrative. You know, we really do.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. And you know, there are a lot of misnomers and misunderstandings, I think, about us as Black people and our culture. You know, I write in the program that there's a universality to being Black in this world. We're literally on every continent. And so that means our culture goes with us. And that circular nature of behavior, of values, of faith, I think that Nana touched on is also really important, because in every Black community, irrespective of where you are in the world, you see that. And I agree, we need to promote that much.
Yeah, exactly. So it's time for our to bring back our resident poet. I'm really excited to have Nicole Salmon back with us again.
Ganan, it's good to be back. You know, one of the things I find attending this conference is how inspiring it is for me. And I think it's inspiring for everyone who attends, because you can actually see the comments in the chat. So I get here and I'm inspired all the time. So I first wrote this next poem about 9 months ago, and shared it last December at the Black Canadian Fundraisers Collective year-end holiday party. I was happy with it at the time, but instinctively felt I needed to do more with it to fully capture its voice. I returned to it a few times earlier in the year, but I guess the moment wasn't quite right. When Midday reached out and I learned of the theme of the conference, it felt like divine intervention, creating the right conditions to pull out what earlier felt like an evasive voice. This isn't the first poem that my brother's words and work has been the source of inspiration. And as a result, I'm grateful to share this repurposed poem here at the Giving Black Conference. Much of it is still the same, but I think it now has the right words and language to capture the sentiments the poem was intended. This is Chasing Lightness. I floated before I could swim in the stillness of the harbor just down the hill from where I lived. With childlike abandon, I took to the water lapping at my feet, enticed by its close familial feel. I enter as its prodigal child, it opens wide to greet. The significance of my presence recedes into insignificance, overcome with an acute awareness that to it, I am but a grain of sand lost in its vastness. I fear not. I lay back with a willingness to surrender my little body to its watery whims. The rhythm of its motion mirrors the tranquility within. I am lulled into the most peaceful of states, body free to float as it may. From the suckle of the harbor to the pulsing hunger of the Caribbean Sea, its gentle roughness doesn't dissuade me. To the east, mountain peaks fall precipitously, riding on mounted desire to touch and reach beneath the sea. Salted water has a unique smell. I taste it too. Birds glide high, lifted with ease in flight, wings stilled by the faintest of wind. A hypnotic canvas suspended above me, a magnificent tapestry as far as the eyes can see. Blue sky puffed and whisked, white clouds floating by, forming shapes that disappear only to reshape, challenging my sense of permanence. The waves undulate, gently swelling up and down, rocking back and forth with attention as it playfully dances towards the shore. Muffled sound in the background, splish splashing and melodious joy all around, heightened sensory awareness without distraction, swallowed by a peace that defies all understanding. Damn, this lightness of being, a blissful taste of how freedom feels. The mind is calm, the body relaxed. This moment sublime, this moment is mine. But don't be deceived or lulled into thinking that calm is the sea's only cloak. Living within stone's throw from the side where sea meets shore, an intimacy forms, a knowing of water's temperament that shifts according to the season's wind. It becomes possessed by a roughness that is best to keep clear of. Gargled utterances erupting beneath, compressed air traveling from water's depth, bubbling to the surface, releasing its held breath, excessively frothing on its path to the shore. In full regalia, its resplendence has claimed lives of those mesmerized by promised fun of a rough ride, and who underestimate the magnetism of its power and pull. Ferocious jaws and erratic swirls, bodies are no match. Last ride, pole borne along an underwater tour, limp and trapped until spat out on distant shores. But today is not one of its restless days. Today, it's invitingly serene. There's no panic in me as my body is held as if it were as light as can be, assured by an unconscious memory that I have felt this protective splendor before. I floated before I could swim in the stillness of the harbor just down the hill from where I lived. With childlike abandon, I took to the water, lapping at my feet, enticed by its close familial feel. I enter as its prodigal child. It opens wide to greet. The significance of my present recedes into insignificance, overcome with an acute awareness that to it, I'm but a grain of sand lost in its vastness. I fear not. I lay back with a willingness to surrender my little body to its watery winds. The rhythm of its motion mirrors the tranquility within. I am lulled into the most peaceful of states, body free to float as it may. The mind is calm, the body relaxed. This moment sublime, this moment is mine. Damn, this lightness of being, a blissful taste of how freedom feels. Thank you.
Nicole, thank you so much. So it feels like every poem you've read has resonated with me. So I grew up thinking I was a mermaid. I am obsessed with mermaids, and what I did, I took a spirit animal
Right.
test. So my spirit animal is a dolphin. So I love water. You know, like every time I go out into the, like I look out into the, like if when I go on holiday, I love to be near the water, and it's crazy, isn't it? Because that's where when you were talking, then it's just that level of freedom.
Yes.
And just being able to just be, you
Yes.
know,
Yes.
with no baggage, no stones, nothing, just
Exactly.
that feeling of just feeling free,
Yes.
mentally free as
Yes.
well,
Yes.
you
Yes.
know.
That's exactly, this for me took me back to my childhood. And I grew up by the Caribbean Sea. And that's what it did for me. There's something about water, and it's not lost that my last name is Salmon. So I don't know if there's anything about that, but it was that calming place, settles the thoughts, and I hope that is what it conveyed. So thank you, sis.
Thank you so much. Too many connections, too many connections. The universe
Wonderful.
is aligning today. It
All
really
right.
is. Thank you,
Perfect.
Nicole.
Take care. Bye bye.
Bye. Oh, so I'm really excited for this next discussion, and it's a conversation spotlight, and it's all to do with the search for Black belonging and overcoming barriers. And I really hope you will enjoy this, and I know you will. So I'm joined by Nika Allen, Mutoni Karuki, and our very own Olumide on joining us right now. I'm so excited, and I really hope you take away some tools. So we'll be asking you at the end to think about what you took away from our discussion, because we're very, today is about making sure that we come away feeling more empowered with the strategy to be able to maneuver this space that we're in, and what that all how we can do that, what that all means. So thank you very much for joining me, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's good to be here.
So, you know, because we've talked already, and but I want to come back to the space. I want to come to you, Aneka first. So, listening to the last podcast that you, Matoni, Queen Jade, and me they did, and Bibuti, there was a lot in that podcast that we had to, unravel. But at this stage in our lives, do we need to belong? Does belonging even matter?
I think the short answer to that is yes, because belonging makes our bodies feel safe. Has everything to do with our wellness and our wholeness. So I think the answer to that is absolutely yes, we do need to belong. I think we have great autonomy over the spaces we choose to be in. I think we can be selective about the spaces where we seek belonging, and I think there's some discernment that is helpful for Black people in the process of determining what spaces will I subject myself to, right? And so I think the short answer is yes, because I really love how Brene Brown deals with the definition of belonging. And, at the end of her definition, she says, true belonging doesn't require us to change who we are, it requires us to be who we are. And so I think, the first part of this conference has demonstrated in a myriad of ways all of the contributions that Black people offer this world.
Yeah.
And so we need to be who we are. We have solutions that no one else has, frankly. And so the only way that we can manifest those solutions is to be who we are.
Tony, same?
Oh my goodness. I love that definition, Brene Brown, that you just shared, Monica, because for me, yeah, absolutely we need to belong. And I think even I shared this at our last podcast is there are times I just feel like, will we ever really truly belong? Because we haven't, as a society, we haven't really reconciled our dehumanization of enslaved peoples. And we continue to see so many things every day that take place that continue to dehumanize us. And so I lose hope. There are days I just wake up and I lose hope. But I want to be hopeful that we can be in those, we can reach to that place. But But I'm grateful also for, like you said, being selective about the spaces that we choose, because that's where I do find true belonging, when I'm with my people. I remember reading Decolonizing Wealth, and Edgar Benaweber said, one of the ways to absolutely heal yourself, to truly find belonging, is find your people.
Yes.
But do you feel, sorry, Matoni, I was just going to, let me let you finish, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just about to say, the sense of belonging and being able to find so-called your tribe, your community, that's a privilege. A lot of people don't realize that actually there are so many Black people that live out there who are so far out that they don't even know where to find that community or that sense of belonging. How do they do that? Because I always say it is such a privilege. I speak to so many, I have Pakistani friends who are so scared of being removed from their community because they don't know where else to go. So for us to be able to say, we can be selective about where we go and who we belong to, that I think in itself is a privilege.
Yeah, it is. And, and I'm sure Anika and Mita can speak to this, like earlier on, even in our fundraising careers, that was a very difficult thing to find. And even just being part of the association, it always felt to me, and I know Anika and Mita feel the same way, in my 17 years of being in this profession, I have always struggled to belong. And there's just weren't those spaces. And I'm so grateful now that we have, like, the Black Canadian Fundraisers Collective. There's F3. We are creating our own spaces.
Yes.
And we can't stand on the sidelines waiting for other people to create these spaces. And that's what I was doing when just trying to, feel what belonging might look like for me in an association that wasn't set up for someone like me. And so we absolutely have to be very intentional about creating our own spaces, because that's where we will find true belonging.
Mide, this hasn't come easy. We know the trials and tribulations that you've gone through to create a safe space, to create this, to create so many spaces for Black belonging to even thrive, and even survive. So how have you managed to do that? And what are the tools or the mindsets for anyone listening now to say, all right, then I am going to create my own space? Because fighting all the time, that's not good for your mental health.
Yeah, thank you, Ginang, and want to just say peace and love to Nika Allen and Matoni Kariuki. So good to see you. I feel we've been in each other's pockets for the last 6 years, and that's a really good feeling, might I say. This here is belonging. Ginang, in direct answer to your question, for me, I've seen it as a double-edged sword. For the almost 3 decades that I've been a change maker, I only recently realized that I had been fighting tooth and nail, day in, day out, 24/7, to belong in white social change institutions and organizations. It was inevitable. There is no other way to put it. And so Derek's theme around, with belonging comes the fight, has pretty much also been my story. And I want to reference our Giving Black podcast episode 11, because it's going to sound really strange. It was that conversation that crystallized for me the fight. Prior to that time, I'd just been fighting and kind of not really understanding why I had to fight. So that's one side. And then the other side is this subliminal thing that obviously I have been feeling rejected for decades. Mm-hmm. And wherever I am, I create community. for our Black people. And that has been my case as a fundraiser in the UK, where we set up the Black Fundraisers Network, came together, we expanded that network, we created our space to talk about Black philanthropy and building skills and professions towards fundraising amongst Black people, come in here, and really talking about race and racial equity, being a member of the Black Fundraisers Collective that Necker Allen founded, the murder of George Floyd, for me, crystallizing the need for us to do research about how we belong in white spaces. And so first with our white papers, to use that euphemism, looking into what is the experience of Black people during COVID in the nonprofit sector. Nobody else was asking that question. And then doing research around Black African philanthropy, as though Africans were not involved in philanthropy at all and were totally peripheral to the conversation about generosity. We've had to create these spaces. So with every drop of rejection that I've experienced, I realize also that I've created 2 drops of creativity. Mm-hmm. And so this rejection, actually for me now, is not such a bad thing, because it leads to us creating our own tools, our own methods, our own tribes, our own communities. And that is where we as Black people, I believe, belong.
Mm-hmm. So I've got 2 quotes for you. So the first one is, man's rejection is God's protection. Mm. And that's something that I followed for a very long time. So I think for me, it was, many people are saying this now, the comments in terms of, we don't have to belong in white spaces. And it's true, we don't. But also another quote is, frustration breeds creativity.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I turned that around slightly, because frustration breeds innovation. And that's what we as Black people have done. Imagine, a lot of Black people have started businesses, have started communities without a seed of funding, because we understand the need for it. So imagine if that world was opened up even more, and I think that's where the nervousness comes in with so-called white supremacy, is if they get given the opportunity, imagine what they could do with that. If they were given the finances, imagine what they could do with that. And that's why they have to hold it back. And this is why Black philanthropy is so important, because we have to invest in ourselves, isn't it? In different ways. And like, when people talk about trying to belong in white spaces, again, you have to get, I think from my experience, you have to get to a certain stage in your life of confidence and network and, actually mainly confidence to be able to survive outside of white spaces. But I don't know, what would you say your experience is in terms of navigating that, those areas?
Well, I think I have a unique experience, and we sort of had this conversation in that last podcast with Queen Jade and Mathoni and Virbhuti. I come from a family who make it very clear that we belong to each other first and always. And I have one of the largest Black families in Windsor. And so it's kind of difficult to explain, what that feels like, right? There is a feeling of belonging in a city that is still predominantly white. But because my family is so large, and because we are so clearly rooted in our history and in communicating that very message, that it doesn't matter what goes on outside of our community, you belong here. You are us. And they send all of these cultural signals to us. And so I've received those signals my entire life. And so it's almost inevitable when I think about, the way that I have consistently shown up as an adult in white spaces, that I have had as many struggles as I have, because I refuse to not be who I am. And for those of you who are edging towards 50 or have surpassed 50, you know, the older you get, the more committed you are to being who you are, right? And so I think that, you know, in the example of AFP, for instance, you know, I was very clearly aware that the climate is anti-Black. I mean, the climate in Canada is that. So the sector has to be that. So the organization is that. And I was very trepidatious about going into that environment. And I had conversations with Medea about that. But it was because there was, Medea actually said to me, your voice is needed at that table. And I knew that that was not about me going and, you know, holding hands and singing Kumbaya. I knew that that was about my Black voice being present, clear and true at that table, come what may. And so, you know, my mom has a saying. She would say, I wouldn't give anything for my journey now. And I feel exactly the same way every time I show up. And I am who God created me to be.
Yeah.
I am never sorry. Is it hard? Yes. Is there a fight? Likely. But there is so much beauty wrapped up in that as well. Community, friendship, sisterhood, brotherhood, right? And in this case, some measure of justice.
Tony, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to say, you know, my life story has been one where because I've lived most of my life outside of Kenya, where I was born, and, you know, often go back and visit. And so I have, from a very young age, we, you know, left Kenya and went to live in the United States and lived there until I was a teen, and then ultimately, you know, went back to Kenya, then came to Canada. And, you know, I've always had to suppress who I am in order to feel that I belong. And I could not, and I couldn't truly feel the comfortability of just bringing my African identity in the spaces that I worked in, lived in, and you know, and that does a lot of harm when you. Yeah. When Derek talked about it, in his, when you can't be who you are, you can't bring your full self. That also does something to you, to your soul, to your spirit. And, you know, I've had to learn how to, to fight and to, not allow and to succumb to not wanting, to not belong, not fight those feelings of not, of I guess, unbelonging, right? Mm-hmm. And so, even in our piece, when we wrote the book, Collecting Courage, I shared about, the same experience. And so, having to just not be yourself is really, it is really destructive. Not just physically, emotionally. I've been, ill. I've stepped away from work. And so as Black folks, we really have to be intentional about our Black identity, our culture, and celebrating it, and teaching our children, the importance of that legacy. We see how what's happening in the United States with even, removing Black history, Black culture from the curriculum, and again, suppressing who we are as a people. It's truly harmful. And so, I think for me and where I am right now in my life is to really, to prevent that from happening, because what I've gone through and how it's changed me, I do not want, when I think about young fundraisers or those who are coming into our sector to work, that that they are proud of who they are. They're proud of their culture, despite all of the noise that they will encounter. That they, just like Anika, that they're reminded constantly of who you are, and they're proud of it. And they will fight to maintain our culture because it is valuable, it is creative. We bring a lot to the table, and so I think for me, that's where I'm at in my life, and that's why I, grateful for these spaces like today, because when I look back in my career, these spaces rarely existed, and so I'm grateful for these spaces where we can actually be who we are and invite others to see, what belonging really feels and sounds like for us.
And I was born in Nigeria. So for people that don't know, I'm from Liverpool in the UK. So I'm known as a Scouser. So I always say I'm a Nigerian Scouser because two very strong identities. Now I was born in Nigeria, and every year my mother made sure that we went back home. So I still call Nigeria, that's my home. Went back home every summer, 6 weeks. We were there, loving life, come back. And one day the teacher, asked the class, primary school, to write what they did that summer. So I wrote that. I mean, I love writing, and I wrote, 2 pages of what we did in the summer, what we ate, and within what we ate, I put caterpillars. So where I'm from in Nigeria, we eat caterpillars. And she put on she said, very good essay, vivid imagination. Now, I was in primary school and I was very intelligent and I knew what she meant by vivid imagination. And I was so upset. So I went back home and I told my mum that the teacher didn't believe what we had done in Nigeria. So my mother said, all right then. So we had dried caterpillars. And my mother made the caterpillars in onions, tomatoes, put it, and she made it the night before and put it in a margarine tub. So I took it to school the next day. I think I was 8. I took it to school the next day and I said, hi, miss, you said I had a vivid imagination. Well, I brought the caterpillars. And she screamed the school down. Everyone came running in, the teachers, the head teacher, because she screamed that loud. But the funny thing about it, the children ate the caterpillars. But what was even more surprising was the Black children refused to eat the caterpillars. And I thought, and I think that's the thing that got my mind, because I thought, oh wow, all the white children are so curious and they've tried the caterpillars. But my fellow Black students were just like, oh, I'm not trying that. And I thought, what kind of household do they come from that they don't feel open enough? And, so there was a lot that happened that day that got me thinking about, number one, my Blackness and where I belonged, but also what happens to Black families when they come to the UK or when they go to America. That sense of belonging means stripping away every sense of being African. And my mother refused that. So we spoke our language at home. My son speaks our language. So that confidence stayed with me till now, to the point where I'm called, ambitious. I'm very ambitious, very competitive, So I think that, it's like Neka said, it's bringing all of you to the table and have that confidence to say, all right, then if you don't feel like that I belong, then let me go and build my own table. And that's exactly what a lot of, especially Black women, have done. So when you look at entrepreneurship, there's so many Black female entrepreneurs out there who are killing it, absolutely killing it. And then the funny thing is, the companies that didn't hire them are now having to hire them back to deliver the work. So these are some of the tools that I think a lot of our brothers and sisters need to feel confidence, in taking away, is if they don't give me, if I don't belong in an organization, what do I need to do to actually, number one, keep your finances flowing, because, I like my money, keep those finances going, but also your mentality in terms of you're not hurting all the time because you don't belong. You're not reliving trauma. You know, there's PTSD that we continually live with. You know, so how do we create that space for ourselves to be the best? Yeah.
I think that's right, Danang. I think, you know, we've all touched on things that I might kind of summarize as kind of saying, you know, on the one hand, as Black people, we bear the responsibility to collectivize with each other. And if we do not, we're then in positions of risk in terms of our own well-being, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. So I think there is an importance to converging as Black people, and there is reward inherently in that convergence when we do that. That togetherness is pretty much the Ubuntu that we talk about. So I would encourage Black people to lean into each other because we've been conditioned through slavery and colonization to distrust, to look at another Black person and say, oh, you know, and almost conjure these negative connotations. So that is work. Yeah. That is psychological work. It is physical work, and it's spiritual work to learn those things that we ourselves have been colonized by. And then the second thing is I want to just state a reality, because you spoke about business again, and we are business people inherently as Black people as well, right? But, you know, I have an interesting observation, which is that my clients are pretty much in the mainstream white majority sector. And so I think also about the fact that there are white allies who are totally aligned to what it means and be Black. Right? It's not antithetical for them, right? That actually, you know, they are caring, compassionate people who also are looking to Black people, like everybody on this screen, everybody, all of our guests, to say, I have an opportunity, collaborate with me, right? Inviting us into those spaces. And I don't want to forget that. And I think we need to spotlight that and try and understand what is the alchemy of togetherness, right? Why do white people either join and converge and partner with us or reject us, right? And I think those are the two. For me, it's binary. I know that I have phenomenal clients who are white, who have just been on this phenomenal journey with AgentsC over the years. And then I know colleagues who are white who will never hire AgentsC to partner them. But I'm more interested in the former. Yeah. And so let us find also those white allies, our Asian allies, our South Asian, East Asian, this kind of diversity of allies who appreciate us for being who we are. And let's build our practice, our intention, our pursuit for belonging, our philanthropy, our generosity together.
And what I hear loudly there especially is trust each other. And again, as well, you know, I mentioned before about the media's role in how we see each other, and we need to dispel all of that. Trust each other, partner with other organizations, you know, who actually want to work with us. You know, there's so many people out there who do want to work with us, you know, and remind ourselves that we are innovative, you know, and we deserve all the blessings. Neka, is there anything you'd like to touch on off the back of what Mide just mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. What comes to me is the saying, relationships move at the speed of trust. And so relationships undergird all of this. And, you know, I've been thinking about this conversation and what brings us to this conversation over the last several days. And what has occurred to me is, and I think I knew this, but it occurred to me in a more tangible way, is that the pursuit of justice that Midday, Mathoni, and I and our co-conspirator friends have engaged in over the last several months and years is a justice pursuit. And that justice pursuit is about Black liberation. And we should never stop pursuing freedom as Black people. The relationship between freedom and belonging is a strong relationship. And so, I believe it's our right to be free and to be who we are as Black people. That's central to belonging. We have the right to belong. Yeah. So if it's about our liberation, it makes me wonder about the people who don't agree with our pursuit of our freedom.
Yeah.
Right? And to Midday's point, for those who do believe in and invest in the liberation and freedom of Black people, which historically has never been exclusively for Black people, those co-conspirators are always welcome. But for those who can't find themselves or find themselves caught up in an argument around the way we approach things or the fact that we are speaking up, which is the pursuit of our own liberation, there's some work there. There's some questions there for them to unpack. But as Black people, we need to embody and embrace the truth that the power is with the people, always. And it doesn't matter what white supremacy culture is saying if we remember that fact. And if we remember that we belong to each other and that the power is with us, what we can change becomes almost infinite.
Most definitely. Most definitely. So we've run out of time. Midday, any closing remarks before we move on to our griot?
I never like to be the one to have the last word. But Tony.
Just like Anika, as she's reflecting on this conversation and our prior conversation, and even the one in this morning where you asked the question, what does belonging feel and look like? And I guess what I would love to leave our audience who are with us today is, for me, when I'm on the African continent, that for me is where I truly feel belonging. And I'm saying this because, and it's not that I don't want to live in this country, but I'm saying is that I don't have to navigate that space and think about my Blackness. And think about the spaces I enter and how I'm going to change those spaces because of my Blackness. I don't have to always, even when you're getting up to go to work or to go into outside of your home, you always having to carry this weight. And so for me, belonging, what it looks like is when I am back on the continent and I don't have to carry any of that. I never have to feel any of that. I want to be able to move and navigate just in the same way my white colleagues move and about every day of their lives, and they never have to think about their whiteness.
Mm-hmm.
That for me is what belonging will look like.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Mathoni, thank you so much. That's deep. That's deep, and it's so true. Having that, I always call it the white passport. The white passport, being able to just live, go anywhere you want and nobody says a thing, you just sail on through. So, yeah. So thank you so much, guys. We have wellness coming up. So we then want to pass over to you.
Thank you, Sister Neka. Thank you, Sister Mathoni. Ganang, thank you so much. We're going to catch up in a few moments. As it stands now, we have touched on a number of deep issues. I want to thank you if you've been here from the beginning, leading up to this point, and also thank you if you've just recently joined. At this segment, our rest and wellness segment, we like to just kind of give our times opportunity to reflect on what we have heard and seen throughout the conference so far. And so it isn't quite an intermission because we still want you to be here and really follow what is to come. But it gives me great pride to introduce Kamel Allside, our yogi and experience creator, who also is going to lead us through a mindful session to guide us into a point of peace and reflection. Kamel, it is so good to see you. How are you?
Hi, Midday. I'm doing well. Thank you. Thank you for such a kind introduction. I've been really enjoying the conference so far up until this point. And I feel honored to be invited for the second year to offer you a space to rest your mind, but also a space to heal.
Yeah. Thank you. Kamel, literally, we are in your hands. Over to you.
Thank you. So hi, brothers and sisters, once again. So belonging, or our need to belong, is a fundamental aspect of the human condition, as we've discussed so far. But it has not always been offered to all of us equally. And it's something that we all hope for. So the question is, how can we create a sense of belonging when historically we have not been invited to the table? The answer, I say, for now is short. We simply sit with ourselves. So find a comfortable place and shape to sit. If you're sitting in a chair, see that your feet are connected to the floor, if possible. And that your body feels supported. Relax your shoulders and arms. And allow your neck and your head to feel buoyant and light. Notice if there is any part of your body that feels uncomfortable. And then make a small adjustment so that you feel more at ease. If you're wearing glasses, I invite you to place them out to the side. Soften your gaze, or perhaps completely close your eyes if you're in a space that is safe enough to do so. And as you settle here, welcome yourself. Bring a sensitive awareness to how you feel. So acknowledge what you are feeling or experiencing in this moment. Whether it's excitement from the previous conversations, perhaps it's hope, agitation, exhaustion, or frustration. And perhaps you feel nothing. If there is judgment around feeling or non-feeling, exchange judgment for curiosity. for generosity and compassion. Eventually, rest your attention on your breath. There's this saying that if you wish to know how you feel, observe your breath. The breath tells you when you're happy, when you're stressed, agitated, and even angry. So take a few moments just noticing the cadence of your breath. How quickly or how slowly you breathe. Sense where you feel your breath the most and where you sense your breath the least. Now, as you continue to breathe, notice any areas of your body where you may unconsciously tense or grip. So if it's the space between your brows, soften there. If it's at your jaw, loosen your jaw. If it's at your core, find ease. Breathe into wherever you feel resistance or rigidity and soften. The heart is a central signifier of the feeling of belonging. So tune into your heart space. Notice any images or sensations. Welcome all sensations. Breathe into your heart space or your chest. Inhale the words I. Exhale the words belong. Inhale I. Exhale belong. I belong. Sense the breath in these words threading through that region of your heart and your chest. Notice how your body responds. Remain open to what shows up. You are chosen to be in this body to do important work, to carry the wisdom of your ancestors, and to transform and heal the hurt of the past, right here in the present. Allow your breath to support you through this journey. Inhaling I. Exhaling belong. I belong. I belong. You belong here. You have always belonged here. And you always will. Take a deep breath in through your nose. Open your mouth, exhale out through your mouth with a deep sigh. 2 more times, inhale through your nose. Mouth open, exhale. 1 more time, breathe in fully and deeply. Exhale through your mouth. Come back to your quiet, natural breath. Reconnecting to your sense of self. Now, as we return to the screen, keep your gaze soft. And the invitation is to take a look at the screen and establishing eye contact with someone. There's a common greeting among Zulu tribes of South Africa. Sawubona, meaning I see you. And the response usually is Sikona, meaning I am here to be seen. So I say to each and every single one of you here, my brothers and sisters, I see you. And you respond, I am here to be seen. Thank you for being so courageous in taking on this practice and for allowing me to guide you. Thank you.
Kamel, thank you so much. I feel like I can take over the world now. Like, I'm so chilled. That was beautiful. And Sawubona, I absolutely love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And yeah, see you again soon.
See you soon.
So we are onto our Griot Hour, and we have the amazing Maxine Thomas Asante, and it's all about audience storytelling, what Black belonging means to you. And we've shared the link, so we want to hear your story as well. So can I please be joined by Maxine Thomas Asante?
Hi, it's afternoon where I am, so good afternoon and thank you all so much. It's been a wonderful, wonderful event. In an event about Black giving, what more poetic a theme is there than belonging? And perhaps if I can take some creative license on the theme, the pursuit of belonging. We've heard today that as Africans and as African diaspora, generally speaking, we're from communities that are fundamentally established on a sense of belonging. This extends beyond resources, though that's inherently what philanthropy in its conventional sense is about, but it also extends to our core personhood. I am because you are. I will be because you have been. And I think one of the parts of tragedy of this is that when we move that concept into a geopolitical North or a Western context, too often we end up sanitizing and weakening the power of those concepts. Rather than exploring the ways that personhood is sustained through relationships, we move to understanding belonging as being about assimilation of Black people into environments and organizations that were never really built to benefit us. So in other words, our thinking becomes narrow. So what would happen and what would be possible if we expanded our thinking and our creativity to extend beyond desiring a seat at an exploitative table? What if we took the opportunity to ask ourselves, what communities, societies, and worlds do we want to exist in and belong to? And there's a beautiful creativity that can emerge from the pursuit of that belonging. We have the chance and the choice to create chosen families, chosen networks, dream organizations, and the societies that we wish existed. The parallel change that becomes associated with this is that we also have to ask ourselves, how might I have to evolve to create an environment where other people also feel that they belong? In the next season of my own work in liberation, social justice, resource redistribution, I'm really seeking the answer to that question of one, what world do I want to live in? And two, who do I need to become for this world to be sustained? From the minor evolutions of self to the substantive unlearning of the social conditioning that I have experienced. I feel really ready for the task, and I'm so grateful for the encouragements of all of those who have spoken today to remind us that it's not just possible, but necessary and essential. So thank you for those of us who are here today. And it's really beautiful to also belong to a community of practice of people who care enough to come to an event like this, be in a space like this, and put ourselves on the line in the pursuit of this work. We have to ask ourselves, are we committed to the new worlds that can exist? And how do we transform this commitment into actions? So thank you so much to AgentsC and all the wonderful speakers today. Thank you for offering me the space to contribute.
Thank you so much, Maxine. So much of what you said resonated. So I absolutely loved it. So there's a link at the bottom as if you would love to share your stories of what it means to belong. So from my point of view, belonging has been something that I think from an early age, I kind of toyed with, being born in Nigeria, then moving to the UK at the age of 3, going on 4, was a culture shock, a massive culture shock, because we weren't fleeing a war-torn country. It was just a decision that my parents made to come and get an education in the UK. And actually, my dad was very forward thinking, in the sense that he knew Nigeria was going in a way that wasn't the best. And that was mainly in terms of, our qualifications not being recognized. And, this, it's even getting worse now. So he wanted us to have an education, a UK education, British education. But I remember coming here, being raised in Liverpool, not having a Liverpool accent, and not even understanding the word black, because I came from a country that was full of black people. So all this, black this, black that, was something that was very new to me. So it was something that I had to, to kind of learn what being black actually meant in Western society. But the funny thing was, a sense of belonging for me, or not belonging, was, coming from Nigeria, coming to the UK, and actually not even belonging to the black community where I was raised. Because where I was raised, a lot of the black people there had, their experience of blackness was stereotyped in what they saw in the media, not from the black experience in terms of they lived in Africa or they lived in the Caribbean. So they were black based from where their grandparents came from, and what they thought blackness was. So some people, some of the kids that I grew up with, they thought that all Jamaicans smoked marijuana because that's what they saw on TV, and they also had a ghettoized version of what being black was. So when they came across someone like me, who, didn't come from that kind of family, my dad was a doctor, my granddad was a journalist, we had business people in the family, I was a culture shock for them. So a lot of times we don't talk about what belonging means, in the sense of, not being born in the country that you are raised in, but then still trying to fit in with what you class as your community, the blackness. But as I got older, I realized that actually I have to create my sense of belonging. What does that mean to me? And literally that's the journey that I've been on, and I've created small pockets of community. So events like this are so important, because it allows people to see different types of black. We're not a monolith. We come from different parts of the world. Some of us know where we came from, some of us don't, and it doesn't matter, as long as we are open in understanding where we all come from, understanding some of our baggages. And even from an African standpoint, I was fortunate enough to come to the UK as a child, but I know certain family members who came to the UK or who moved to America as adults and didn't understand the African American experience, didn't understand the Black British experience. So again, this is for people who need to understand that no matter where we're coming from, no matter what baggage we're coming with, we have to be able to communicate and actually listen to one another. And belonging comes from listening and not making people feel as if they don't belong, So that's my sense of belonging. I'm a worldlian, like Maxi Priest said. And we have to come to terms with, what are we fighting for, but also being authentic to ourselves. So yeah, so I'd like to welcome back the creator of all of this, Mide, back with me as we have some closing remarks. Mide?
Yeah, thank you, Ganang. Wow, what marvelous stories. I just want to thank you for sharing. Thank you for being my wonderful and beautiful co-host. I appreciate that. I want to thank everybody who has invested their time in the Giving Black Conference, particularly our audience. I know there are so many things that you could be doing right now, but to crystallize, if you like, our sense of belonging, you're here, you're with us, you signed up, and you have gone on this phenomenal journey with us, and I thank you so much for that. I want to thank Neon One, Imagine Canada, and RBC for being phenomenal sponsors of the Giving Black conference this year. I appreciate so much the kind support and encouragement that we have received. I want to thank all of our speakers, Yugen Ang, for sure, Nicole Salmon, Derek Bardwell, Ray Williams, Jade Ashley, Queen Jade, Ashley Nicolau, Nana Apazino, Neka Mutoni, Kimel, thank you. I don't know what to say. Every year we have this conference, and every year I personally am just filled with so much pride at how we are able to come together in community. People of all cultures, all backgrounds, who want to steep themselves in philanthropy and generosity from a Black perspective. So I want to close just by thanking everybody. I want to make a special announcement that next year, our plan is to have the Giving Black Conference on Emancipation Day, which will be the 1st of August. Please hold that space and place in your calendars today, 1st of August, 2024. We will be sending you a feedback survey because we want to always improve our conference. So please look out for that, and please spend just a couple of minutes completing and filling that in. We are also going to invite you in a few moments. There should be a link that pops up on your screen to the palm wine and cola nut section of our conference today, and that's where we can all just come together as community, switch our screens on, and have a really good chat. I don't know.
I want to say, we need to say thank you to you for creating the space. You know, because this, I know you hate it,
Yeah.
but you know what? We have to give thanks to you, your energy, the gift, because you know sometimes when God chooses his people, he knows what he's doing. And sometimes we just don't know where the gift comes from, where this sense of, you know, paying it forward, this sense of philanthropy comes from. But it is a calling, and we have to give thanks for that. So, Mida, I want to thank you for, you know, for finding, you know, such an amazing space and safe space for us to remember our greatness, you know, and why we are who we are. And Black joy. You know, we do go through some trauma, but you know, we're here, you know, and as you say, we're belonging, and I want to thank you for that. I really do.
Thank you. I never like to have the last word, but I'm going to have it now in this segment. And I appreciate that. And, you know, I'm going to deflect, gracefully deflect. But I do want to also say that there is another compelling reason why people should join us in the palm wine and cola nut session, which is that the this year's version of the Giving Black t-shirt are going to be given to folks who join us. I think there are some conditions. I can't remember what they are. But anyway, see you on the other side. That's it. That's all. Now you know why I don't like to have the last word.
You did well.